Here's Chris Buchanan with the business news headlines.
Well, business confidence falls to an 18-year low. Anglo Platinum output to fall by 200,000 ounces. ArcelorMittal's fourth quarter profit falls substantially on lower demand. And Nhlanhla Nene, Aka the chairman, falls into the Deputy Finance Ministry post. The JSE down 3.25% to 20,950. Gold at $759 a fine ounce. And a barrel of Brent at $64. The rand is currently at R9.61 to the dollar, 15.53 to the pound, and R12.56 to the euro.
What's this about Nhlanhla Nene, our new Deputy Finance Minister, falling into the post?
Well, he's got that post, and he'll be our Deputy Finance Minister. He was the chairman of the Portfolio Finance Committee.
He's the guy who had the chair that was built by Julius Malema.
He's the guy that had an unfortunate incident on SABC2.
But he's come through it with good humor and good grace. And in fact, if you haven't seen that video, which has been watched 260,000 times on YouTube, it is on MoneyWeb right now. And I'm sure he sees it in good spirit. David Shapiro, a cartoonist of note. I guess Shapiro really put Nhlanhla Nene into perspective.
No,
if there's something like that happens to you, fortunately here at MoneyWeb the chairs are pretty solid, so we aren't going to be.
You have to
over.
laugh at it, and you have to see the humour in it and go with it. And I think you'll attract more people that way.
And he's going to be our next. He'll be our next finance minister probably.
Looks that
So
way, yeah.
if he's Trevor Manuel is saying that it's time for him to move over. So congratulations to Nhlanhla. He's not only overcome.
That was Barbara Hogan's previous position. I think she was involved in that. Also very, very good. She's also moved up in the world as well.
Not too sure about the political side, David, but I am sure that the stock market today broke the 6-day winning streak.
Yeah, it had to happen. I think that after 6 days of very good gains, we had to have a comeback day. And I think it's just it's the euphoria that followed the U.S. election, vanished, and investors started to look at the problems that Obama will face, and they're quite severe. Turned down in business activity, huge job losses.
Well, he said so
the US.
in his speech this morning. He said that
I think it's
is,
going to be
in
a
our
big
lifetimes,
test.
we're never going to face anything quite like this.
Yeah, it's going to be a big test for him, but there are plenty of advisors that will help him. I was very interested to see who would take over the Secretary of the Treasury.
David, do you remember 2 years ago at the Berkshire Hathaway annual general meeting that Warren Buffett said that his recommendation for president was Barack Obama? And at that time, he was a long shot because Hillary Clinton was likely to take.
In fact, he backed both of them.
But he was.
Yeah, he said both
he
could
read
do the
he
job.
said he'd read the book and he was very impressed. And by the way, I'm sure that those book sales are going to be going through the roof too.
He charmed his way in, and I think it was quite evident if you've watched his progress.
There's substance to the gent as well. Dave, having a look at the stock market today, a lot of the new listings came under big pressure. Rolf's down 33%. Wern, with some horrible financial results, down by a quarter. Infrasource down by 22%. It seems as though investors are now taking a very close look at the new listings that did so well in the past year. And after someone like Wern come out with poor results, saying maybe they're not all they cut up to be.
Well, I think that's the disappointment, because I think 2 years ago we believed that the earnings would be on a sustainable path. In other words, they would continue to grow 25 to 30% over the next 5 years as this infrastructural program rolled out. But what's happened is we've now discovered that it's not as easy as that, and the market had mispriced them. In other words, overpriced them. Now we've seen that correction take place, and I think they're fairly priced for the kind of results that they're producing.
And also the market gave the benefit of the doubt to the forecasts from these companies.
Well, I think that's where you don't want to cast aspersions, but I think they didn't see any problems, in their path, and quite obvious. We've seen ANSYS come through. Now ESOR's come down with disappointing. Wern's come down with disappointing results.
How do you like SA French? That listed at 100 cents a share, at R1 a share in November last year ago. It's now 25 cents.
Well,
and they lease out cranes, for heaven's sake. How can you go wrong in that business?
Well, what happens is you can go, because sometimes the contracts are not coming on due date. We've seen that with Wern. They've had a stop-start kind of 6 months. ESOR as well are under cost pressure. So we've seen ESOR come down from about 9 Rand down to, R3.70 as well. So there's been an 80% retraction in these some of these share prices. So I think they're fairly priced now for for the kind of results that they're giving. And also, it's a warning to a lot of other construction shares into the future. Things can go wrong. It's not a smooth path.
But the concern must be on the JSE being able to do something about checking projections. I go back to SA French again. This is a company listed at a rand. The projection was that the operating profit would go from 30 million to 43 million, that the margins would widen from 15.5% to 16.5%. Clearly, that's not going to happen. Otherwise, the share price earnings, by the way, were forecast at 20 cents a share. Share price is sitting at 25. So somebody knows something.
Well,
and certainly those forecasts are going to be nowhere near, the actual is going to be nowhere near the forecast.
Alec, I think a lot of the management are naive, and they think they've got to. They believe that they've got to give these very prominent forecasts, and that's not fair on investors.
But then
you've got to warn. This is the kind of industry we're in. Things can go wrong.
You look at the other end of the scale on the big numbers, and Anglo Platinum today having problems with its smelter in Polokwane. Did you work out what that's going to cost, Anglo Plat?
Well, I think it's somewhere around about 10% of their production. It's 200,000 ounces. What is it?
About 1.25 billion rand in turnover gone this year.
Yeah. Well, the platinum price kicked up on that. If you saw the platinum price kicked up about $30 on the fact that it's an already tight situation. Platinum production is already tight in the market, so hold back as much as that. It's quite considerable.
So even an ill wind blows some good.
For the other platinum producers, not for Anglo Plats.